A tarnished cannot become a lord. Not even you. A man cannot kill a god.
Contrary to popular interpretation of Nietzsche's now parroted and overused quote, God is dead doesn't mean that God is literally dead or does not exist. Although he was deeply critical of Christianity, Nietzsche didn't say this to argue that atheism was correct, regardless of whether or not you believe in God. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, as seen in his work The Gay Science, he states that, quote, the belief in the Christian God has become unbelievable, and that everything that was built upon this faith, propped up by it, grown into it, including the whole of our European morality, is destined for collapse. In other words, people place so much emphasis on Christianity as the pillars of European morality and society that these pillars would be destined to eventually crumble. As the Enlightenment period brought a wave of secularism and scientific advancement, once belief in God could no longer absolutely define morality, there would be no objective justification for all the systems that were in place, leading to what Nietzsche predicted would be societal collapse. The notion of the collapse of divine justification can be seen in many forms of media, but what I want to analyze today is from Software's Elden Ring. Elden Ring's lore is extensive, so it'll be beneficial if you've already played the game or already know some of the lore before watching this video. Like many others, this was the first FromSoft game I ever played and finished, though I still haven't completed the DLC, so I'll only talk about what I know from the main game. I'm also aware that JRPGs often also feature killing gods, but apparently the topic of whether Elden Ring is classified as a JRPG is dubious, and I don't have any experience or knowledge with the JRPG genre outside of Elden Ring, so I'll only be analyzing Elden Ring in this video. If you want to learn specifically about this topic in regards to the JRPG genre, I recommend taking a look at this video. It's incredibly well made and in-depth and offers a great historical and cultural analysis, but in this video we'll mainly be focusing on a philosophical lens. Anyway, Elden Ring is full of these Nietzschean themes, and the phrase God is dead is literally made manifest through the story. God, as in Marika, isn't just figuratively dead, he or she is literally dead. Well, she may not be completely dead, but for all intents and purposes, her body's at least in a comatose, dysfunctional state, crucified inside the air tree for defying the greater will and shattering the Elden Ring. Marika's other half though, Radagon, is still at least partially alive, and we kill him in the final battle, followed by us killing the Elden Beast itself, the living incarnation of the Elden Ring housed inside Marika/Radagon. This, in a way, represents Nietzsche's quote literally, with us killing both Radagon and the Elden Beast, along with various other demigods. God is dead, and we have killed him. But there's more than just clever wordplay here. In Elden Ring, God is also dead figuratively, much like what Nietzsche intended his quote to mean. Now, in this interpretation, we can define God in a number of different ways, given Elden Ring's unique and sometimes confusing pantheon. In a way, Elden Ring combines both monotheism and polytheism, with many gods, demigods, and outer gods, one of which is the powerful and unseen greater will that created the universe and imparted their will upon the lands between. For simplicity's sake, in this section of the video, I'll define God as the greater will, since that's the most analogous to the omnipotent singular God seen in Christianity. Elden Ring is full of examples of a growing lack of faith in the greater will and the consequences that stem from it. For one, the event that triggered this story in the first place, the Shattering, was caused by Marika's defiance of the Golden Order, or essentially the government and dominant set of beliefs and laws in the lands between that Marika was the figurehead for. But the Golden Order and Marika served the greater will. The Elden Ring, the Air Tree, and all the systems in place in the lands between served the greater will. But somewhere along the way, Marika saw some error in this. Whatever her motivation, Marika's shattering of the Elden Ring led to her imprisonment inside the Air Tree's punishment, as well as causing the greater will to abandon the lands between, leading to a war between the demigods to claim the Great Runes. The parallels between Marika's defiance and Nietzschean themes are clear. The greater will's abandonment and the ensuing chaos mirrors Nietzsche's reaction of, quote, mourning and deep disorientation, unquote, at the prospect of society's collapse due to the decreased faith in God. The lands between prove his prediction to be true, as the very fabric of the land, held together by the Elden Ring's rules for the world, was physically torn apart due to America's defiance against their greater will. Though God, or the greater will, is not dead, beings in the lands between are forsaken by him due to their own actions, with the demigods being as unwanted, abandoned children. Outside of America, though, Ronnie is perhaps the best example of open defiance against the greater will. And the Age of Stars ending, Ronnie takes the Tarnished as her consort, stating the following, quote, "Now cometh the age of the stars, 1,000-year voyage under the wisdom of the moon. Here beginneth the chill night that encompasses all, reaching the great beyond, into fear, doubt, and loneliness as the path stretcheth into darkness." Ronnie essentially launches the lands between even farther from the greater will, now with no golden order, instead choosing to give the lands between complete freedom from the influence of outer gods and their vassals. For the first time, both her and the lands between would have the freedom to follow their own path and rule themselves, completely upsetting the status quo. And though this venture may be lonely, dark, and directionless, it will have been free from the tyranny that the Golden Order wrought. Free from their violent oppression against all who they saw defied the greater will. Free from the Golden Order's heretical treatment of those who lived in death. Free from the brutal burial of merchants under Lanedell. Free from their persecution of Albinaurics, Omens, Fire Giants, Dragons, and many more groups under divine justification. Whether the lands between abandons God or God abandons the lands between, or both, Nietzsche's phrase rings true. God has become absent in Elden Ring, and we are the cause. But Elden Ring takes a more unique spin on the ramifications of this. Though there's chaos, directionlessness, and disrepair in the absence of the greater will, is this always a bad thing? Nietzsche faced the prospect with despair and concern, but both Marika and Ronnie embraced it. Though there was chaos, there was freedom in leaving God, which was what prompted them to take the drastic measures that they did to disentangle themselves from it. In this way, Elden Ring is a masterclass in existentialism, which emphasizes humans creating their own meaning and purpose of existence in an inherently meaningless universe. Though, in this universe, God does exist and exerts a certain meaning, or will, hence the name, onto the world, his motivations are so ambiguous and costly that Marika, and especially Ronnie, risked everything to create their own will and defy fate, even at the cost of directionlessness and disorder. Just as one may initially feel lost with the absence of a god, they ultimately have the freedom to act and choose of their own volition, not because God wanted them to do something, but because they wanted to. Albert Camus, an existentialist and absurdist, even illustrates this by asserting that believing in any religion was what he called philosophical suicide, by deluding oneself into believing there is meaning, and that the freedom that acceptance would bring is the best reaction to the lack of ultimate meaning in the universe. Thus, as Elden Ring illustrates, the figurative death of God should not be faced with pessimism or hopelessness, but an embrace of individual freedom and navigating the uncharted stars, despite the struggles that life may bring. God may be dead, but we are not. Though Nietzsche worried that society at large would crumble in the absence of God and lead to nihilism, he himself did not believe this to be the only reaction. Complementing Nietzsche's dead God is his concept of the Overman, in contrast to what he called the last man, who distracts himself from his loss of morality and meaning with short-sighted and apathetic pleasures in the void left by religion. The Overman is his vision for the alternate version of humanity's future. Rather than repressing what the old Christian church deemed as sin or basic human desires, Nietzsche believed the Overman should accept and mold these parts of himself into an artistic plan. Instead of fostering self-hatred and asceticism, the Overman would lead a healthy, life-affirming lifestyle, while concerning himself with only the matters of the here and now on earth, no longer burdened by concepts of heaven or hell. In contrast to the last man, the Overman has become and elevated himself from his past, with a strong sense of his own purpose and character, despite the absence of God. He often holds values such as, quote, independence, self-realization, personal liberation, self-determination, and psychological completeness and health, unquote. In Elden Ring, the Overman can be characterized best by the Tarnished. This may seem surprising, since the Tarnished, by virtue of being the player, is meant to be completely customizable and played in any number of ways, while being silent throughout the game and not given much characterization. But in every playthrough, the premise is the same. Quote, "And one other, whom grace would again bless, a tarnished of no renown, crossed the fog to the lands between to stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord." Unquote. You begin as a tarnished of no renown, without even a finger maiden to guide you. You weren't even supposed to be alive or make it past the grafted scion in the Chapel of Anticipation, yet you did. You not only struggled on, despite the odds, but once you beat the game, you become the only tarnished since Godfrey to ascend to the throne. In other words, you are driven by an overwhelming sense of purpose that takes you even farther than Sir Gideon Ofnir, who tries to stop you before you reach the Erdtree and state that no tarnished, not even you or him, can kill a god. And yet you do kill a god. Driven by your purpose, you kill multiple, proving Sir Gideon Ofnir and the universe wrong, even in spite of your lack of renown and tarnished status. In the words of Margit, a, quote, "foul tarnished, emboldened by the flame of ambition," unquote, becoming Elden Lord? This motif of coming from unknown or humble origins and ascending to the top despite all odds is common in FromSoft games and portrays the Overman at its finest. The tarnished is someone who overcomes themselves and their circumstances, pushing on with unbreakable spirit, incredible determination, and purposeful ambition, accomplishing things as an Overman that no regular mortal could do. But in the process, the tarnished also has agency in deviating from the path set out for them by Marika and the guidance of grace. Depending on the ending they choose, they may dismantle the Golden Order in place and embrace the Age of the Stars, or they may become the Lord of Frenzied Flame and let chaos take the world. In fact, there are 6 different endings, but in each, the tarnished has the ability, through their actions, to choose the fate of the world. This once again represents existentialism, as the tarnished, as a mortal, has the freedom to choose their own path and defy the destiny created for them, in the absence of Marika and the greater will. In his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche states, quote, "Man is a rope fastened between animal and overman, a rope over an abyss," unquote. Indeed, there are 2 possible futures for humanity in the new increasingly secular, godless age. One is to succumb to nihilism, to become the last man, wallowing in apathy and short-term pleasures like much of the inhabitants of the lands between, complacently accepting the world as it is. Among the various issues plaguing the world today, climate change, international conflict, wealth inequality, and sharpening class tensions, this is the easier path, the path of distraction and gratification. Scroll, rot in bed, sleep, work, repeat. The other is to rise and become the Overman, empowering oneself with one's higher purpose, lest we fall into the abyss. Like Nietzsche, we should all strive to become Overmen. We should all strive to become like the tarnished. So seize the flame of ambition and don't ever let it fizzle out. Dare to imagine and forge a different future from what you've always known. The world may be tough, but it doesn't always have to be. Aim high and challenge the systems and power structures in place, and who knows, maybe you'll be able to fell a machine as seemingly indestructible as a god.